Hey guys, it is Targon here doing another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we are going to be covering gear assessment. This is going to be part one in my video series of assessing your gear, and today we're just going to talk about assessing individual pieces. I'm going to do another video covering sets, and then I'm going to also try and do another video on like different champion prototypes, just because I think this is one of the most underrated aspects in Raid. Early on, it's fun. You're collecting champions, you're building your team, and that's all well and good, but you want to maximize your champions in order to get the most potential out of them. And that's what gearing is all about. So if we know the right gear to use, then that's going to help us get the most out of our champions. And if we know what gear to sell, then we're not going to be upgrading gear that's not going to be as much use to us. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. So I'm on my alt account, and I think this is still sort of like a mid game. I'm starting to push some of the late game stuff, but really it's still more mid game. Like I'm still using a fair amount of 5-star gear on a bunch of my champions. Probably at the point where I'm starting to say, at pretty much 5-star, I'm going to be looking to sell. But so gear assessment now, and again, I'm going to cover the sets later on, but sets are not necessarily the best way to go. Sometimes you're better off getting some really good individual pieces. So um, life set, once you get past the early game, life set's kind of, you're not really going to use it very much. Unless it's just you happen to have two really good pieces together. So what I do with life set is if the piece is not great, I'm selling it right now. Early on, it's going to be a little different. Where you are in game is going to determine what you're selling. Early on, a life set is actually very good. But once you get into mid game, you're going to be trying to get other stats because it's easy to get HP percent elsewhere and so forth. So, but I look for what pieces of gear are really good. So here I've got a couple defense gloves here. These are actually kind of old, and here's like a helmet that I like here. So, maybe I'll end up pairing these two, maybe not. Maybe I'll just end up putting these on champions individually. And so the thing to remember is that you don't always need it to be part of a set. Ideally, yeah, that's great, but sometimes you just get individual stats that fit the champion you're trying to build. So you want to just go with the best piece available. You're just trying to get the best stats you possibly can. All right. So, with that in mind, we're going to want to look at what do we want our champions to do and what are the champion prototypes that we're going to be looking to build the most, right? So I've got a ton of gear here. I'm almost full. I need to sell some gear to make room for a bunch of the gear that I'm hoarding in my inbox. Just being honest. I'm a gear hoarder. What can I say? I struggle with this. The struggle is real. You're not alone. I know that most of this gear that I have in here, I'm never going to use, but I can't quite get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of a good chunk of it today, though. And I would encourage you to do the same. Some people have told me, like, if you've got more than like 300 to 400 pieces of gear, then you're overdoing it. Personally, I'm more like, you know what? I've got a stash of gear and I'll sell it as needed to make room for what I've got coming in. But I do need to make more room for what's coming in. So the champion prototypes, and I'm gonna go over this a little bit more in gearing, but so what you want to look for is stats that make sense to go together. Now, obviously, any combination of stats can be useful for the various champions you're building, but and you can kind of look like if you pull a 6-star piece, here we've got kind of a mix of things. We've got HP percent, we've got crit damage, and we've got speed. Now, all of those things can blend together very well. The thing is, what are the combinations that I'm going to use most? So that way, if I'm on the fence about a piece, I can evaluate it really quickly by looking at the substats. Also, we're going to talk about which primary stats we want to look for especially. All right. So I'm not going to teach this for beginners. I'm going to teach this for intermediates. Hopefully you're aware of what the primary stat options are. In general, flat stats are not going to be as good as stat percentages. So if you have Gloves, chest, and boots, you have a chance to get percentage or flat stats for HP, attack, and defense. While flat stat pieces are not immediate discard, it certainly brings the value of the gear down in the overall assessment. There are a few instances where a flat stat piece is going to be really good for you. Specifically, like if you're trying to build speed. So if I have something in speed gear, and even if, let's see, do I have flat gauntlets? No. But so like even if this was like flat attack, because it's got a double speed roll on it, the value goes up, especially like earlier on, if I'm trying to build a speed booster or something. So that is kind of like the one area where a flat stat piece, I'd really take a look at it and see if I can get some good rolls on the substats. Okay, so the main things that I'm looking for is if I'm going to use it to build. I kind of have like three sort of prototypes. One is my support buff champions, that includes revivers and champions that are putting buffs up, right? And so typically for those type of champions, I want high HP, I want high defense, I want as much speed as I can possibly get on them, and potentially if I'm going to be bringing them in, especially for Hydra or like a Go Second Arena team, I'm going to want resistance. So those are four stats that I want to really keep an eye out, even if I can just get a few of those. So for example, this helmet, here we've got a bunch of those stats. We've got resistance, we've got HP percent, we've got defense flat, and we've got speed. This is a really solid piece of gear here. So if I am on the fence about a piece, and I mean, this is a 6-star legendary piece, so it's a solid piece anyways, but if this was a 5-star, I'd still maybe like look at it. With where I am in this account, I'd still be pretty happy with a 5-star piece that's like this, because it's got these all these substats together that are going to be beneficial in building that one prototype champion. And really those are arguably the most important champions to build well. If you can build a solid team reviver, then even if the rest of your team maybe is lacking a little bit, at least they can pick them back up and you keep going, right? That's how you push through content, is your support champions, your shield champions, your revivers, your sometimes the cleansers, right? We want to have all these stats together. All right. So the other thing that I'm going to look for is my debuffers, right? So I'm going to say, look at Stag Knight. Actually, Stag Knight's probably not the best because I'm kind of got him as a hybrid build. But so the stats that I'm looking for most in my debuffers are going to be sort of, again, some similar things with, I'm looking for the HP, the defense, right? So I've got defense percent on the chest. I got some speed. I've got him set up to kind of hit a little bit too. So yeah, there's some attack, but the big thing is I want him staying alive. So Stag Knight's not the best. Let's see, where's a good debuffer that I've got built more just for the debuffs. Here we go. Look at Umbral, right? So Umbral, she's got this provoke, right? And she's got a block buff. So both of those are huge critical debuffs. And this is actually an early build. I pulled her early on. I haven't really updated her build much for quite a while. But the stats that I'm looking for her is going to be speed, accuracy, and again, defense and HP. If I'm bringing her in for Hydra, ideally I'd love to have resistance on her. I don't on her currently for this, but so kind of similar to the buffer and the reviver champions, you're going to want the defensive stats, HP and defense, and you need to have speed and you need to have accuracy. So you kind of just add accuracy in on that. So I'd be looking for pieces that have all those things together. So this is a perfect piece here. So I see accuracy, speed, defense percent. Boom. Those things together are great. On let's say she's a defense-based champion, so most of this has defense. But if I have here, we have HP percent and speed and defense percent. Great. Really, when it comes to assessing the substats, if you see speed on there, that's kind of like the first thing I'll look for is there speed in the substats? And if there is, what else is going with it? So especially if I have speed, HP percent, and defense percent all the way, I'm using that all the time, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be 3. Like even if I had 2, even if it was just the speed and HP on here, that's still a really solid piece. Let's see, here we've got HP and accuracy again, got a little bit of crit rate. Crit rate's always a nice thing to throw on most of your champions, unless you've got like a reviver or a buff champion who's like constantly buffing your team or reviving your team and not really doing many hits. Then maybe I'd say probably not much point in putting crit rate or crit damage especially on them. But someone like Umbral, she's always attacking, so having crit rate is beneficial, but again, it's going to be secondary to those other main stats that I'm looking for, which is speed, accuracy, HP, defense, maybe some resistance as well. All right. So the third kind of prototype champion is your nuker. Typically, a nuker is going to be attack-based. There are some very hard-hitting defense and HP-based champions, so you're going to want to look at potentially having defense and HP options, but really, typically when I'm building a nuker, it's attack-based. So if I see a piece of gear, so like here, we've got attack percent and speed. I rolled this up to 3, and look at that. We've got triple roll on speed. That's a great piece to have. Here again, we've got speed and crit rate. So the main things that I'm going to want on my nukers is speed. You almost always want more speed on your team. So speed, crit rate, crit damage, and then especially probably for attack, I'm going with attack as well. So kind of those 4 things together. Now, if I'm building a PvE champion, then it's still good to have a lot of HP and defense thrown in. So I would be looking potentially for those as well on the stats. So like I have Ninja set up more for PvE. So for this piece, I was more interested in kind of getting his health so that he can take a few hits. So you see, like even though he's an attack-based champion, I ended up going defense on the chest just because I wanted him to be able to survive late into the game. So again, so you're looking speed, you're looking for crit rate, crit damage, and attack. And so Genbo is kind of the classic example of an arena nuker. I'm using him in my Go First Arena team, and I'm trying to get him as much crit damage, get him to 100% crit rate, and he buffs himself, so I'm just about there. And then I want to just put attack on, so I'm just looking for all the attack stats for building him. All right, so when I'm looking at my gear, the first thing I'm going to look for is what is the main stat, obviously, okay? So again, in general, flat stats are not as good as percentage stats. So if you have enough gear in a set, you could potentially just select these 3 here, and select your flat stats, okay? And you could go ahead and just sell all. I would say maybe check and see. So here we have a flat attack in a speed set. If speed was on here, I would see if I could get a double roll, in which case this would be really good if I really needed to boost somebody's speed. There's speed on here, but just because of the set, it's a crit damage set with flat HP. Usually I'm not looking to pair like an HP champion with crit damage, so I'm just going to go ahead and sell that. This is flat. This might be interesting, but still for gloves, I'm not really looking for attack so much. Flat HP, so this was a good example, right? So we got a 6-star, flat HP on the chest, HP percent and speed as substats. All right, and it's so a shield set, 30% HP ally shield for 3 turns. If we can get this to double roll on HP percent, that's still going to give us a lot of HP. Plus, I think the upgrade is like to an 8% boost if you glyph it. So this piece, because we have flat HP and HP percent in the substats, it could be a really, really high HP piece in a shield set, which gives a buff that scales from your HP. So this could be really, really good. If I'm on the fence about keeping it, so say like I'm not, maybe, I've got plenty of other chess pieces that have speed. I'm looking for something with extra HP. I would roll this up. HP percent, roll it again. Ah, darn, we didn't double up. But in this case, speed is always helpful as well. So I'd keep this anyways, but if I really wanted the double roll, you can go ahead and roll it up, and if it doesn't roll the right way, you sell it. HP percent on boots, I usually am just almost always going for speed, so I just go ahead and sell that. HP percent in a cruel set, not as helpful. So I'm probably going to go ahead and sell. Go ahead and sell this piece, right? So we've got speed, crit rate, crit damage, defense percent. So ideally, I'd love to swap defense for defense percent here. But still, this is going to give us a lot of defense, and it's going to give us some crit rate, some crit damage, and speed. So if I'm building like a defense-based nuker, this could be a really, really good piece. And honestly, with these substats, I'd probably hold on to this anyway. But what you can do if you're on the fence is see if you can get like a double roll. So all these stats are good, right? No matter which stat this is, if I can get a double roll to start, then I'll be good. So I just roll it up to 8. Double roll on crit damage, probably that's the least one that I would want for defense, because usually my defense champions, I'm looking to just make them as tanky as possible and then get them some crit rate. But if I was building a defense-based nuker, this the value of this piece just went up because we got a double roll on crit damage. If I wanted to further assess it, I could roll it up to 12, but at this point I'm really losing silver if I sell it. And I'm going to look at my fatal sets and see if I'm really going to need that. And let's see, attack on the gloves. All right, so we're going to sell most of this stuff, right? We're not going to need it, but we checked. We looked it over, and we found a couple good pieces on here that might be useful. The biggest one to look out for is speed sets with speed substats. Those are probably the ones that I would most want to roll up. So that's kind of how I'll assess those pieces early on, is I'll get rid of the flat stats for the most part. The other thing, so when it comes to evaluating the primary stats, really for gloves, because if I'm building an attack champion, I'm going to want crit rate and crit damage on them. So attack percent, they're not getting as much gain as they would from crit damage, right? So if I want my champion doing as much damage, I want crit damage, not attack on the gloves. So because gloves are the one place where I get crit damage, I usually sell my attack percent gloves. The one place where you would rather attack percent gloves is going to be with bomb champions, because the bomb damage scales from attack. Potentially, I think Astralon has a passive where, like, if his attack is higher than the enemy that's attacking your team, then the damage gets reduced, I think is how it works. But it's I think it reduces it by 3%. Like, come on, like, at least bump it up a little bit. But so that could be a case for attack percent, but beyond that, I'm not really looking to use attack percent. Here, I think I had these speed gloves with speed in the substats. So again, here's speed in the substats. So I just rolled these up to see if I got lucky. and I didn't. 6-star attack gauntlets in an attack set. I'll probably hold on to those in case I want to build a bomb champion. And then I'll just go ahead and sell most of the rest of these unless I get like some really good stats. So like this piece here has some really solid stats, but I'll probably just end up selling it as well. We got speed there. Maybe I'll hold on to that. Another speed and crit stats. And so when I see that I have a bunch of the same stat, same primary stat for a bunch of pieces, especially if it's not a primary stat that I use a whole lot, I'm just looking for best option, which would be this one, because this is all the stats that I would want for an attack-based nuker: speed, crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. Ideally, I would love to swap attack percent with crit damage. That would make this piece perfect, but it's good enough, so I'm going to hold on to that and sell these other ones. And I'll sell the others later. So attack percent, not as good on the gloves. For gloves, the things I'm looking for most, again, is crit damage. Crit damage is kind of number one, but probably I actually end up using HP percent gloves more often, because for the support type champions, I want to keep them alive, and getting that extra HP really, really helps. So crit damage and HP percent are kind of the two biggest ones that I look for on gloves. Crit rate is also helpful. Defense percent also really good. Everything else, unless they've got really amazing substats, I'd say go ahead and sell. For the chest, so the chest, you don't have the crit options, but you do have resist and accuracy. So again, having the flat stats, value goes down. Chest, I will use all three of the percentage stats. It really depends. Again, HP kind of being king. And then typically for late game, end game stuff, you're going to want resistance chest pieces. And for a few champions, you may want accuracy pieces as well. But the ones I use most are going to be HP percent. So when I see HP percent chests, I really hold on to those, because I use that for like faction war champions all over the place. I'm using those for my dungeon teams. I'm using those for a killable clan boss setup. Sometimes defense percent as well can be really helpful for there, just because I'm trying to build champions to stay alive. Resistance I don't use as much, because really I just use it for Hydra, and the champions that I have with the resistance for Hydra are also my go second champions for Arena. So I don't use resistance chest pieces as much. Accuracy, for where I'm at, like usually accuracy chest you don't need unless you're doing an arena debuffer like Madame Cirrus, who you want her being able to rip the buffs off everybody, and you need to make sure she has plenty of accuracy. That would be where I would go with an accuracy chest piece. Otherwise, if you're trying to do dungeons and stuff, I'd say look for HP percent, look for defense percent. If you're building a nuker, look for attack percent. And then you evaluate the substats in accordance. All right, so here we've got, boom, resistance chest piece with HP percent. Perfect, love it. That's great. That's going to help my champion stay alive. So like I might put this on, say, Duchess when I revive her. Gives her as much resistance as possible, so she's not getting stunned, she's not getting feared. She's able to resist those debuffs, so that way if my team goes down, she still gets her turn, she brings everybody back up, we're back in business. HP percent helps her stay alive, obviously. She can take more hits that way. Ideally, I'd love to see this be defense percent, but flat defense is usable. All right, this is a piece that really the value, it has a double roll on accuracy, so it's good. Defense percent, it has a single roll on defense too, so that gives us a lot of extra defense. But ideally, typically I'm not looking to load a champion up with defense when attack is useful to them. So like a defense-based champion, their skills scale from defense, so attack isn't going to help them hit harder. And usually I'm not as concerned with crit damage. Now, sometimes I will build, like Ninja, I have him in a defense chest, and I need him with accuracy, attack, and crit damage. So if I'm using like a PvE champion, then sometimes I'll want a piece like that. But in general, what I'm usually looking for altogether when it's a defense percent chest is different. But this is still a good piece because we got a double roll on accuracy. And if you can get a double roll somewhere, it really helps minimize what you need elsewhere. So if I'm rolling up gear, let's see. So here's a perfect example, right? Accuracy chest. The stats fell all over the place. Now, this is still good. This is still useful. Defense percent, crit rate, this would be good for a debuffer champion, right? But the stats are all over the place, so it's a lot easier to get these stats from other pieces of gear. If I got a triple roll on defense percent, then all of a sudden this piece becomes really great for a defense-based debuffer, like perhaps Syl, right? Her hits scale from defense, so if we had a triple roll on the defense percent, great. And she'd need accuracy. If we got a triple roll on the crit rate, then that immediately by adding this piece to a champion, if we get a triple roll on either of these percentages, just takes the requirements for the rest of our build way down. So the value of the piece on a triple roll is much greater. So here, if I can get it to go on attack percent, let's just roll this up. So just for fun, we'll roll this up and see. Did not get attack percent, so I'm going to go ahead and sell this actually, because I don't use accuracy all that much on the chest piece. And I'd probably sooner go with this because it's got a speed substat. Don't be afraid to roll your gear to see if you can get that double roll, okay? So here again, we got a resistance chest, crit rate, and attack percent. Typically with resistance, I'm looking for 6-star gear with resistance just because the requirements are so high. You need so much resistance. It's almost like a 5-star piece isn't going to help a whole lot. Because you have to be like 90 over the enemy accuracy. So if I'm taking a team into Hydra, like I need a lot of resistance. Even at normal level, you need a pretty solid amount of resistance. But maybe we're going to get lucky. So instead of just selling this piece, and again, ideally, I'd rather, if I'm going resistance, I'm probably looking for someone who's going to be able to survive. So HP percent, defense percent. Could be good for a go second nuker, especially someone if they have like a Candifran who puts like the veil on himself. Like then this could be good because he resists debuffs and still has attack. So let's go ahead, instead of just selling it, let's see, maybe we'll get lucky and land on attack or crit rate. No, we didn't. I'll go ahead and sell this. But if I had landed crit rate, then I would have, taken this to level 8. Maybe if it hits crit rate again, or maybe even attack, then I'd consider keeping it. All right. And granted, you are kind of losing silver, but it's not that much. And the gain you get if you get a triple roll is much higher than what you gain by just flat out selling the piece. So let's go ahead and let's upgrade this again. So hopefully we can get speed. If I can get a multi-roll on speed, then this piece value skyrockets. And potentially, actually, if we can get a multi-roll on crit damage, because it's a crit damage set, the value goes up. So let's see. I'm going to do this one at a time. So we're spending 600. 1,600. We're at, what, 2,500. Now we're going to 5,000-ish, a little over 5,000. We rolled it up. So we spent about 5,000, a little bit more, to get this first roll. It went to flat defense. Not interested. Sell. Oh, wow, I'm still making 55,000 off of that, right? It's nothing. Whereas the gain that I get, if that goes to speed, then I can say, all right, let's take it to 8. And if that goes to speed, all of a sudden I've got a really good piece of gear, because getting those double, triple, quad rolls especially, very hard to do. So it's worth upgrading questionable pieces if you're looking for that one particular stat in speed, right? So again, a piece like this is kind of just a great piece. We got crit rate, accuracy, speed, defense percent. Perfect. Love that. Here we've got speed. So hopefully we can get a double roll here. It is a 6-star resistance chest, so I'll probably hold on to it anyway. And I'm going to cover going over the individual sets in another video. Okay, so hope this helps you just with thinking things through, with what to look for in the substats, and kind of the same concept again applies to the accessories. Um, you know, main thing you're looking for is just, does it add up? So here we've got an HP ring. It's got HP percent in the substats. Great, that's a great piece. Even if it just has defense percent, seeing if you can get that extra roll there. Really, on the rings, I'm just looking for extra percentages, because if I can get a whole bunch of the percentages, then that ups the value. But here would be a good example, HP percent or HP ring with HP percent and defense percent in. So this would be something I'd throw on that, support tanky champion, right? Because it's going to have lots of HP, lots of defense. That's what we want. That's sort of our MO for a attack champion. Let's see, do we have? So, an attack champion, I'd probably be looking for either attack, or sometimes I will go with a defense ring if I think they're going to be getting hit. And then what I would look for is a defense ring with attack percent in the substats. Because a lot of times like you see Genbo here, he's not fully leveled, but he's under 1,000 defense right now. So adding flat defense will really help bring that up a bit. And then the attack percent is going to scale much higher. So I'd go, if I'm building him to take a hit, then that's how I would kind of go with the ring. Again, with the banners, resistance and accuracy is kind of the number one thing I'm looking for in the banners. And then the next thing I'm doing in the evaluation is their speed would be like the next most valuable substat, and then is their percentages. And then for the amulets, the biggest thing is crit damage. Although I will put, defense or HP on champions. Usually, again, same with the gloves. I'm not really looking to build an attack champion with lower crit damage. I'd rather have a crit damage amulet than an attack amulet on my attacker 99% of the time. Again, if you're building a bomb champion, then go with attack on the amulet. Okay? All right. So I want to wrap this up. I'm going to do another video covering the sets, and then I'm going to do another video on building the champions themselves for the different prototypes, okay? So I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment and ask any questions. All right, I'll catch you next time.